Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Hunter Salazar. I'm here with Roderick.
Bodhi.
There we go.
Roderick. Call me whatever the fuck you want to call me. Excuse me. Can I say that?
Interchangeable, yeah. And I'm also here with
I'm just happy to
Gary.
be back.
Parser.
Excellent. I'm liking the smooth transition we're starting off with. All right, so today we're going to talk about reincarnation. So I have a lot of background in reincarnation with as far as learning about Hinduism early on and also Buddhism, how they understand it. Also the Norse idea of reincarnation, even the Aztec understanding of reincarnation. A lot of my knowledge is pulled from various sources, and eventually I started developing my own personal gnosis based on my working with the gods and also various realizations. But most of my stuff is actually drawn just straight from Hinduism. So reincarnation can take a number of forms. It's a vast topic, but putting it very simply, we've all been various states of matter. We've all been various states of plants and animal, working our way, our consciousness working through one body after another, learning and trying to reach a higher vibration. And the reason why we age in essence is because the soul is trying to shake off the body because it's trying to go back to the source from which it's from. So the whole purpose of the reincarnation cycle is for greater and greater enlightenment, and it's frustrating to a lot of people who try to understand reincarnation because, like, why do we forget our past lives? Why are we made to forget again and again and again until we reach a certain stage of realization or enlightenment, and then you remember your past lives? That's basically so we don't get attached to anything that our former bodies were attached to, or any states of consciousness that our former bodies were attached to. So the soul has its own learning system and observational system that it uses throughout the various forms of consciousness that it takes. All the way to here is many millions of reincarnations and rebirths, all the way until we get here. So there are astral heavens, there's astral hells, and there's a constant drive for the soul to experience what's not just what it has done to others, but various forms of existence. And it's working through every lesson that it needs to learn until it has gotten to us, basically. So it's not like there's a God out there that's like working it all out and making us go this way or that. It is the soul's journey working its way through various forms of consciousness. Does that make sense?
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
It makes a lot of sense.
Do you have any drawing from your own either experience or different forms of either religion or spiritual practices? Do you have any ideas on reincarnation that you'd like to share, Bodhi?
Oh yeah, I have a lot. So I first came across the idea. Well, first of all, I want to make it clear that I've always believed somewhere inside of myself that rebirth or reincarnation was a real phenomenon. I didn't grow up really strictly religious, but I was exposed to the Baha'i faith, which does not really believe in reincarnation, but they have like an interesting sense of what happens after death. They believe that after you die, you will just continue going through different spiritual realms, but not like, the soul transmigrating from one body to another. And I also have Muslims and Christians in my family as well who do not believe in it. But to me, it just made sense. And once I reached an age like somewhere in my teens, and I started reading books about Buddhism and Hinduism, it just made a lot of sense to me. Now I know that Hinduism and Buddhism differ slightly on it. So my personal ideas from experience of reincarnation it's more of the Hermetic principles that all is mind, all is mental. So we live in like a psychological universe. So instead of transmigrating something that's very fixed, it's more like a mental thing based on one's state of awareness or state of consciousness, if that makes sense. That determines like their next form to me. So that's how I understand it, really. So
It makes a lot of sense. It sounds very connected to my kind of like delving into Zen idea of reincarnation, the mind transferring through various forms.
Yeah.
Gary, do you have any kind of like feedback as far as like personal gnosis or what you believe, or going through various systems that you've researched or learned from as far as reincarnation goes?
That's very vast. I would say that a lot of it came and stemmed from personal gnosis, based off of various rituals and magic that I had done delving into the Egyptian Neter and the Neteru system from, the ancient Egyptians. Basically, their whole system is based off of forces of nature. Okay, and these forces of nature represent what could essentially be considered the Godhead. Okay, now when I was delving into these forces of nature, I did a lot of mirror scrying at that time. And that mirror scrying involved a lot of me invoking Noxum Pax, Absum Pact, light and extension kind of thing. And eventually I started getting visions and scrying into my own mind's eye, where in the mirror of my own self-reflection, I was seeing gold. Okay, and now that gold ended up turning into past visions and past regressions of a life that I had lived back in ancient Egypt. Okay, now this comes from the Chaldeans. It comes from the ancient Egyptian system first, okay, from the Egypt, which turned into gypsies. And we're speaking on reincarnation in this particular matter. So Egypt, gypsy, I am Bohemian, I am descent. My last name is Hernser. Nobody even knows how to fucking say that shit. I don't even know how to say that shit, right? But I looked into it, man, and it's Bohemian. Okay, Bohemian is technically a gypsy. They don't want to be called gypsy because over there in Bohemia, that shit is a very derogative term, and it considers you a thief. Okay, pretty much.
Is there like a particular kind of so like we have like Romani gypsies and then we have various types of gypsy. Do you know what kind of gypsy, or is it just, or you just know that it comes from like a gypsy culture?
I do know that it comes from a gypsy culture. It comes particularly from Czechoslovakia and Bohemia. Okay, now but I was doing the whole meditation upon the Noxum Pax Absum Pact, and I was delving into the whole Thoth, Teoti, Jyoti, Egyptian style of magic that I'm into. Particularly, I was given a lot of visions from these netter, these forces of nature, so to speak. Okay,
so
and I was given.
Netter is what? Can you describe what netter is exactly?
Netter is literally quite. It can be considered a god. I know that a lot of people don't consider Neter to be God, okay, because when a lot of and I see this coming from a lot of the African culture as well, okay, they say no, that is not a god, it's a Neter, okay, but depiction wise, it was the same thing when it comes into transliteration, okay. Egyptian Neter particularly is a force of nature, okay. Now a force of nature, essentially, in my own practice and in my own particular gnosis, is essentially God. Nature is God. Okay, there's no separation thereof. That's just from my own personal understanding of it, okay, and whatnot. Okay, now, however anybody wants to describe that, it's just a different. Okay, but that's how I see Neter. Okay, I am a god. You are a god. Bodhi is a god. The breath that we breathe into ourselves every day, that is the Raha, okay, that is the prana, that is the life force of nature, which keeps us alive, which is God, essentially, which makes the stars shine in the night sky, which is you, me, I could go on about this, but I'm going to go, I know that the topic is reincarnation, I understand.
I'll ask about the Egyptian system, actually. So we see in the Egyptian system, we see a lot more gods with animal heads than kind of a lot of other systems. I know there's plenty of other systems that have a lot of gods with animal heads, but in Egypt, when it comes to mind, Anubis, Horus, Osiris, not so much, and various gods in Egypt seem to have animal heads. So I've heard that it's very much related to the shifting form of nature itself, transforming into different forms, but also being kind of like a conscious being that's like anthropomorphic. Does it relate to reincarnation at all, or why do we see so many Egyptian gods that have various kinds of...
Very good question. And this can also be put into the Hindu system as well, because, as in the Hindu system, we have cats and we have all different types of animals where being reincarnated as a human is a privilege in the Hindu system, okay? And if we look into the Egyptian and the whole Neter system, like I was saying, everything being nature, they saw those representations of those animals as the gods themselves. They saw the crocodile, they saw, the ibis, they saw the hawk, they saw the falcon, they saw the serpent. Everything had, even the beetle, Kefri, which brings the sun across the horizon, and to Ra, the falcon, which flies above the sky. Everything was nature. Everything was a representation. The gods in the system itself with the actual animals were the same thing to the ancient Egyptians, because nature and God itself were the same thing. So reincarnation in that aspect of that can go into a whole different type of hierarchy of reincarnation unto itself, based on the various different depictions of animals, beings, but as a human being back in ancient Egypt, including Hinduism, was basically being a god reincarnate upon the earth. That's what the pharaoh was. The pharaoh was the representation of a god, taking on human form. And being a human was basically divinity upon this earth. So we can bring about the systems, we can bring about everything that was given to us from the stars, so to speak.
Is there any kind of relation? So in Hinduism, we kind of have the avatar idea of the source or Godhead coming down in various forms, based on the message that was needed and based on what was needed of the world, various places and various forms. So there are many avatars in Hinduism that were the source, kind of like the source from which everything came. Whether you call it Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness, comes down the time for a particular purpose in various avatar forms. So some of these avatars, like one of Vishnu's avatars had a lion head, and one of his avatars had a boar's head. So it does. Is there equivalent in the Egyptian understanding or system to where kind of like some kind of either Godhead or the source, what have you, comes down in these various Egyptian gods' forms for a very particular purpose? Or is there not an equivalency and direct kind of connection to Hinduism that we can draw, similar to Vishnu coming down as a being with a boar head or a lion's head?
I can only give you one representation right now that I know that's going to vibe with you, Hunter, and that's Kali Ma. Kali Ma, when Kali is turned into the bloodthirsty goddess where she just ravages and just destroys, and even her husband is underneath her feet. This is the same kind of energy that came into Sekhmet when the attackers of Ra and Ra's boat from him coming across the horizon came into play, and they were attacking his boat. Okay, they gave Sekhmet the go-ahead to just slaughter. And she became so bloodthirsty that the only way that they could put her to like asleep, so to speak, was to get her drunk on red wine, because she got drunk on the blood of her enemies. So
was it wine or beer? Because I know that the Egyptians have this festival, like every year they had this big beer drinking festival to kind of appease the goddess. Is the red wine something else, or was it because it sounds like the same ritual where they would get drunk off beer, and it was kind of like calming down the god. I think it was Sekhmet.
Yes.
Sekhmet had crocodile head, correct?
No, Sekhmet is like the lion-headed, like the lioness goddess. Bastet, basically, the cat goddess. She's even considered Hathor, because these Egyptian Neter, they go into each other like Sokor Rahosar. These Egyptian, they become each other in certain aspects. It's a very symbiotic relationship, almost how Magi become with their gods as well, how they take on their god names and things like that, and then invocations, so to speak. Okay, so it's the Egyptian system is, I love it, dude. I really do.
I like it too.
I love it.
It's
dude.
a pretty cool system.
I can relate to it so much, because when we bring in these energies and these deities into ourselves, it's almost like we are living their experience through us. They're living their experience through us, and we become them. But back to the point, she basically Bastet Hathor is just this bloodthirsty lioness, a goddess that just goes nuts because she's trying to protect the bark of Ra, which is bringing balance, which is bringing the sun over the horizon through Khepri, which is reborn through Osiris every day through the serpent skin and reshedding every day, like shedding skin. It's dude, I love it. I could geek out on it all day. But back to the point, basically, Sekhmet is the lioness version of Bastet. I've also heard her be referred to as Hathor, that goddess in herself, just in a very bloodthirsty form, to where she is just devouring basically the enemies of Ra, the enemies of that source, the sun, you know? So
kind of bringing it back to reincarnation. So is there? We've talked about how different gods manifest in various forms. We've also talked about how consciousness manifests in various forms. I think that one question that I get a lot of the time is what is the practical use of the understanding reincarnation, or understanding that we're coming back again and again and again. How can we use that to kind of change our own lives? So in Buddhism, I mean, there's a vast area in where Buddhism, various forms, talks about, don't do this or do that, because it basically will become your reality, and your reality that you inflict on somebody else will become your reality in a future life. So Bodhi, do you have any feedback on kind of? I know that you've delved into Buddhist systems quite a bit. Does it feel as kind of like rebuking or punishing as like the Christian system does? Because a lot of the time in Buddhism, it feels like a very like judgmental, forcing into like, if you do anything wrong, you're going to suffer the consequences. I guess my question is, how does it feel different than Christianity? And what is your feedback on that?
Well, so my experience in Buddhism is comes from Chan Buddhism, which is the Chinese progenitor of Zen Buddhism, basically. And I know in Japanese Zen, Soto Zen, Rinzai Zen, they don't really talk about reincarnation as much or rebirth as much, but the Chinese do talk about it a lot. And I've read some literature, I've heard some Dharma talks where it does almost sound scary, to be honest. Because like they would say things like the human form is the highest form. This is the one that's like, we have the best of all worlds as a human being. But they also say that humanity is the rarest form. And to be honest, that was something that I struggled with, because to me, with 6 or 7 billion people on the planet, it doesn't seem to be that rare, first of all. But I know what they mean, because how many non-human forms are in existence? There's millions and millions and millions of non-human forms available. But I don't think that the Chan Buddhist, of course I can't speak for all of them here, but just from my experience of learning from them, I don't think they would talk about that as a doctrine of punishment, but to be aware. Now, my opinion over the years has changed a little bit, because like I've come to this awareness mainly this year that any religion at all, and I'm not bashing any religion, but any organized religious system in itself, the founders had the secrets of it, right? The founders like Buddha, Christ, Krishna, they all had the secrets, and they wanted to share these things with the people. But after their passing, the ones who took the scrolls or the tablets or the oral teachings would sort of they would kind of put a functional system together in order to keep the population in line. Now, that could be for the good and for the bad as well, depending on, like, see what I'm saying? So I think in Buddhism, it's more of a way to help us remain mindful and to be peaceful, to be non-harming. So we will kill less. So we will, stop doing bad things because, there's a lot of talk. Like if you kill someone, it just comes back to you. You may be reincarnated as an animal being hunted. You may be reincarnated as an animal hunting another animal, things like that. But I don't really believe it as much. I think it's just states of mind. I think like if a person has like the more of the Tibetan view. So a person that goes around like maybe hunting for food for their family, living in rural, Virginia, whatever, and that's all they know. I don't think it means that they're going to necessarily, be incarnated as an animal. They're not going to be a bear or a deer because they hunted a deer, necessarily. But I can also see the flip side of it, that if they have like a very animalistic, predatory nature of someone, like maybe some kind of like crazed, bizarre murderer or whatever, that like Jeffrey Dahmer or whatever, I don't know, by embodying that state of awareness, it makes sense that there's a high possibility of them incarnating as a carnivorous animal. Not that being in an animal form is punishment, but you see what I'm saying? But it's a state of awareness. Just like being a human is a state of awareness. So
Yeah. So it definitely comes down to need. Like, so if somebody, so I think Yokananda used the example of St. Francis of Assisi, that like, he didn't want to eat meat, but it was kind of what's available. And if you eat meat, like basically if you kill an animal because you have to, because that is a sustenance that like you have to get, or you're providing for your family, that's one thing. I think that the biggest, as far as the stories of Hinduism when it comes to reincarnation, is that when you needlessly kill a bunch of animals and just gorge yourself beyond what you need, or you just do it just for fun, then it becomes something that can possibly come back at you like a boomerang. But it has to be a situation in which you're going far beyond your need and you're needlessly harming things. When you start needlessly harming things, then you're basically, the soul's just like a recorder, and it's like, okay, well, the recording's going to change to where we're in that position because I've been in this recording situation from this point of view. It's time to flip the camera, and then the soul will just naturally go into that other form on the other side of the camera, and kind of like switch perspectives. So I guess in both Buddhism and Hinduism, the thing to focus on is to clarify your own perspective from your own viewpoint, your own clarify your own minds, figure out what you need, figure out how you could harm less, and then eventually you will go beyond the cycle. You'll go beyond the cycle of things that can be killed because you're not killing anything, and you'll go beyond the cycle of rebirth because we're here to help all the other things that are here, not necessarily to take advantage of them like we often do as human beings. So the human beings, we have the highest capacity for compassion, for love, and for upholding the planet, but we don't use it to the high. We don't use it to the highest of our ability. And then that's why we need to concern ourselves with the perspective and the actions we have in this world.
The vacuum cleaner came online just now.
I don't know where that came from. That's kind of weird.
I don't know where, I don't know why I started vacuuming either, man. I don't know. Maybe it's picking up my vibes because of everything you're talking about, not eating animals and stuff. And I'm all about fucking eating animals and protein, and I'm like, yes, let's eat some animals.
Well, yeah, animal protein is actually just a flex.
I eat animal protein too, though. So
bro,
I do now.
Let's eat muscle.
All right, well,
yeah, because we're both about the Iron Church.
Segment, everybody. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Bodhi, for being on this video. We'll go ahead and hop onto the podcast in just a moment. But thank you both for being here, and thank you everybody for watching. And we'll see you all on the channel.
Thanks for having us, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, have a good one.